Dr. Evelyn Marlowe had always been drawn to the stars. Even as a child, she spent her nights gazing through her father's old telescope, wondering what secrets lay hidden in the vastness of space. This unquenchable curiosity led her to become one of Earth's most renowned xenoarchaeologists. When the opportunity arose to join a mission to Mars, she didn't hesitate. It was the chance of a lifetime to uncover the mysteries of an ancient civilization that once thrived on the Red Planet. The expedition had been grueling. Mars was a harsh and unforgiving world, its thin atmosphere offering little protection from the relentless solar radiation. The team had set up a research base in the Argyre Planitia, a vast impact basin that, millions of years ago, might have been filled with water. They had been searching for months, excavating sites that previous missions had overlooked, hoping to find evidence of the Martian race that had long since vanished. So far, their efforts had been largely fruitless, until that day. Evelyn's team had been working on the fringes of a crater, where ground-penetrating radar had detected unusual subsurface anomalies. It was there, beneath layers of ancient dust and rock, that they found it. The object was buried deep, nearly 30 meters below the surface, and it took days of careful excavation to reach it. The first thing they uncovered was the edge of a metallic structure, unlike anything they had ever seen. The metal was smooth and seamless, with a strange, dark sheen that seemed to absorb the harsh Martian sunlight. As they dug further, they realized it was a box, a perfectly symmetrical rectangular container about the size of a small suitcase. It was adorned with intricate symbols that glowed faintly when touched, but no one could decipher their meaning. "It's not Martian," Evelyn whispered, awe and trepidation mixing in her voice. "It's something else, something much older." Her team exchanged uneasy glances. They had all read the mission briefings, the speculations about alien artifacts on Mars, but no one had expected to actually find something. The discovery was beyond their wildest expectations, and it brought with it a sense of foreboding. Evelyn's mind raced with possibilities. Could this be a relic from an advanced species that had once visited Mars? Or was it a remnant of a civilization even older than the Martians themselves? She knew they had to be careful. Protocols were in place for the discovery of alien technology, but no protocol could prepare them for the unknown. Despite the unease, Evelyn's curiosity was insatiable. She ordered the box to be carefully extracted and brought back to the base for further study. The process took hours, and the team worked in near silence, the weight of their find pressing down on them. As the box was finally lifted from its resting place, the ground beneath it collapsed slightly, revealing a hollow chamber below. "What the hell is that?" one of the engineers muttered, peering down into the darkness. The chamber was vast, and from the faint glimmers of light reflecting off metallic surfaces, it was clear that the box was only part of a much larger structure. "Seal it off for now," Evelyn ordered, her mind racing with the implications. "We'll investigate it later. First, we need to get this box back to the lab." They transported the box with the utmost care, placing it in a secure containment unit designed for extraterrestrial artifacts. As they returned to the base, the team was buzzing with excitement and fear in equal measure. Evelyn, however, was quiet, lost in thought. She couldn't shake the feeling that they had just uncovered something that was meant to stay hidden. Back at the base, Evelyn immediately began examining the box. The containment lab was equipped with the latest technology, designed to handle and analyze alien materials without risking contamination. She started with non-invasive scans, X-rays, magnetic resonance imaging, and spectroscopy. The results were puzzling. The metal of the box was unlike any known alloy. It absorbed all electromagnetic radiation, making it impossible to penetrate with standard imaging techniques. The symbols on its surface emitted a low-level energy field, but the readings were unlike anything in the database. It was as if the box itself was alive, responding to her presence in subtle, almost imperceptible ways. "This doesn't make sense," Evelyn muttered, staring at the data on her screen. "It's like the box is resisting our scans." Over the next few days, she became increasingly obsessed with the artifact. She barely slept, spending every waking moment in the lab, trying to unlock its secrets. Her colleagues grew concerned, but they were too caught up in the excitement of the discovery to intervene. Besides, Evelyn was known for her tenacity. Once she set her mind to something, nothing could dissuade her. As she worked, she noticed that the box seemed to react more strongly to her than to anyone else. When she touched it, the symbols glowed brighter, and the faint hum of energy grew louder. It was almost as if the box was waiting for something. Late one night, long after the rest of the team had gone to bed, Evelyn decided to take a more direct approach. She had tried every scientific method she could think of, but the box remained a mystery. What if the key wasn't science, but intuition? What if the box was meant to be opened by someone who could understand it on a different level? Ignoring the nagging voice in her head that told her to stop, Evelyn reached out and placed both hands on the surface of the box. The symbols flared to life, glowing so brightly that she had to squint against the light. The hum became a low, resonant tone, vibrating through her bones. She felt a sudden sharp pain in her temples, as if something was drilling into her mind. But instead of pulling away, she pressed her hands harder against the box. The pain intensified, but so did her determination. She was so close. She could feel it. Then, with a soft click, the box opened. The light vanished instantly, plunging the lab into darkness. Evelyn blinked, trying to adjust to the sudden change. The box had split open along a seam that hadn't been visible before, revealing its contents, a small, glowing orb floating in the center of the box, suspended in a field of energy. Evelyn's heart raced as she leaned in closer. The orb was mesmerizing, a swirling mass of light and color that seemed to shift and change with every passing second. She reached out, her fingers trembling, and touched it. The moment her skin made contact, the orb pulsed with energy, sending a shockwave through the lab. Alarms blared and the lights flickered as the base's systems overloaded. Evelyn felt a rush of information flood her mind. Images and sensations too fast and too alien for her to comprehend. She screamed as the orb's energy enveloped her, but her voice was lost in the deafening roar of the alarms. Her vision blurred, and she felt herself being pulled away, her consciousness unraveling as the orb consumed her. The last thing she heard before everything went dark was the voice of the base's AI, cold and detached, announcing an emergency lockdown. Containment breach detected. All personnel, evacuate immediately. But it was too late. Evelyn was already gone. In the silence that followed, the orb continued to glow softly, pulsing with an eerie, otherworldly light. The box, now empty, lay open on the lab table, its secrets unleashed upon the unsuspecting world. The sterile hum of the Martian base was a stark contrast to the chaos unfolding within the containment lab. After the catastrophic event of the previous night, the entire team had been confined to their quarters, the base on high alert as scientists and military personnel scrambled to assess the damage. Evelyn Marlowe was gone, vanished without a trace, leaving behind a void that none could fill. Dr. Ethan Walsh stood by the observation window, staring out at the crimson landscape that had become his prison. He had been one of the few who had interacted closely with Evelyn, and her disappearance weighed heavily on him. His mind raced with questions. What had truly happened in that lab? What was the nature of the orb she had touched? And most importantly, was there any chance she was still alive? As the hours turned into days, the base's communication systems remained partially disrupted, making it difficult to reach Earth or other Martian outposts. The isolation gnawed at the team's morale, and whispers of conspiracy and extraterrestrial threats began to circulate. Ethan knew that the key to understanding the situation lay within the box and the orb, but with Evelyn gone, the path forward was murky. One evening, as the Martian sun dipped below the horizon, casting long shadows across the rocky terrain, Ethan received a message from the base's AI, Area. The message was brief but urgent. Evelyn Marlowe, status unknown, recommend initiating emergency protocols for containment breach. Ethan's heart pounded as he activated the emergency briefing. Aria's synthesized voice filled the room, outlining the latest data. The orb, once thought to be inert, was now emitting a complex array of energy signatures that defied all known physics. It appeared to be alive, reacting to environmental stimuli, and possibly even to the presence of a living being. Determined to uncover the truth, Ethan delved into the research logs Evelyn had left behind. Her notes were meticulous, filled with diagrams and equations that hinted at a deeper understanding of the artifact. One entry in particular caught his attention. The box is more than a containment device. It is a conduit, a bridge between dimensions. Zalnar seeks freedom, and I fear it uses the orb to breach our reality. Zalnar. The name echoed in Ethan's mind, a reminder of the ominous presence he had glimpsed in Evelyn's final moments. He had to find a way to communicate with the orb, to reach out to Evelyn if she was indeed trapped within its enigmatic depths. Late into the night, Ethan worked tirelessly in the lab, isolating the orb from the rest of the base's systems to prevent further disruptions. Using a combination of electromagnetic pulses and quantum resonators, he attempted to stabilize the orb's energy emissions. As dawn approached, a breakthrough occurred. The orb's pulsations synchronized with the resonators, creating a coherent energy field that Ethan hoped would facilitate communication. Taking a deep breath, Ethan initiated the interface. A holographic projection emerged from the orb, displaying a complex lattice of symbols similar to those etched onto the box. The symbols began to shift and rearrange, forming a language that was both alien and eerily familiar. Ethan's pulse quickened as he realized he was witnessing a form of communication, a language beyond human comprehension. "Accessing consciousness," Arya announced, her voice tinged with static interference. Suddenly, the room around Ethan dissolved, replaced by an expanse of swirling colors and ethereal lights. He felt his mind expanding, his consciousness melding with the orb's energy field. Images flashed before his eyes, vast landscapes of unfamiliar planets, towering alien cities and fleets of starships traversing the galaxy. It was a glimpse into the Vorex's civilization, a species far more advanced and enigmatic than humanity had ever imagined. Amidst the barrage of information, a singular figure emerged, Evelyn. She stood before him, her form flickering like a hologram, her eyes filled with both fear and determination. "Ethan," she whispered, her voice echoing in the vastness of the orb's consciousness. "You have to help me. Zalnar is breaking free." Ethan reached out, his hand passing through her spectral form. "Evelyn, I'm here. Tell me what happened." Her image steadied, and she began to recount the events that led to her disappearance. The box was a prison for Zalnar, a sentient energy entity the Vorex created to control and contain threats beyond their understanding. When I opened it, I believed I could communicate, to understand its purpose. But Zalnar used the box's mechanism to link our minds. Now, it seeks to escape by merging with human consciousness, using us as vessels. As Evelyn spoke, Ethan felt a growing sense of urgency. The orb was more than just an artifact. It was a living, breathing entity with its own agenda. If Zalnar succeeded, the consequences for humanity would be catastrophic. "We need to reinforce the seal," Evelyn continued. "The box's containment matrix is weakening. If Zalnar fully integrates with our dimension, it will have access to unimaginable power." Ethan's mind raced, piecing together the fragmented information. "Is there a way to communicate with the Vorex? Maybe they left a failsafe?" Evelyn hesitated, her image flickering. "It's possible. I found records within the box's databanks, coordinates and protocols for reinforcement, but accessing them requires a deep understanding of Vorex technology, something I haven't fully mastered." Determined to save Evelyn and prevent Zalnar's release, Ethan vowed to continue her work. "I'll do whatever it takes. We can't let Zalnar escape." With those words, the connection began to fade. Evelyn's image dissolved into the swirling colors, leaving Ethan alone in the lab once more. He stared at the orb, now pulsating with a steady rhythm, a silent reminder of the looming threat. As the days progressed, Ethan and the remaining team members intensified their efforts. They decoded Evelyn's notes, integrated Vorex protocols into their containment strategies, and developed a preliminary plan to reinforce the box's seal. However, time was not on their side. The energy signatures indicated that Zalnar was steadily gaining strength, its influence seeping into the base's systems and beyond. One night, as a fierce dust storm raged outside, the base's power systems faltered, causing intermittent blackouts. During one such outage, the orb began to resonate at an alarming frequency, sending shockwaves through the lab. Ethan felt an invisible force pressing against his mind, as if Zalnar was attempting to breach the barrier between dimensions. "Arya, report," Ethan commanded, trying to maintain control. "Energy fluctuations detected. Potential containment breach imminent," Arya responded, her voice strained. Ethan knew that the next few hours would determine the fate of not just the base, but the entire planet. Rallying his team, he outlined the plan to activate the Vorx protocol and reinforce the seal. It was a risky maneuver, requiring precise synchronization and unwavering focus. As the storm intensified, the base became a battleground of wills. The orb's energy surged, creating temporal distortions and causing equipment to malfunction. Ethan and his team worked feverishly, following Evelyn's instructions to the letter. The air was thick with tension, every second stretching into an eternity. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, the team initiated the reinforcement sequence. The containment unit hummed with energy as the Vorx protocols took effect, generating a stabilizing field around the box. The orb's pulsations began to subside, its chaotic energy gradually calming under the influence of the newly established seal. Ethan breathed a sigh of relief, but the battle was far from over. They had managed to stabilize the situation temporarily, but the true test would come when they attempted to permanently secure the box and find a way to sever Zalnar's connection to their dimension. As dawn broke over the Martian horizon, casting a pale light into the lab, Ethan reflected on the night's events. Evelyn's sacrifice had bought them precious time, but the threat of Zalnar still loomed large. Determined to honor her memory and protect humanity, he knew that the next steps would require every ounce of their collective ingenuity and resilience. "She's out there," Ethan whispered, gazing at the orb, "and we'll stop her, whatever it takes." With renewed determination, the team prepared for the challenges ahead, unaware of the full extent of the cosmic battle that was about to unfold. The Martian base was silent in the eerie aftermath of the containment protocol, but the tension in the air was palpable. Despite their success in temporarily stabilizing the situation, everyone knew that they were living on borrowed time. Dr. Ethan Walsh, now reluctantly thrust into the role of leader, couldn't shake the feeling that they were standing on the precipice of something far more dangerous than they could comprehend. Days turned into weeks, and the orb remained in a state of subdued activity, its pulsations a constant reminder of the alien entity still trapped within. Ethan and his team had been working tirelessly, deciphering the Vorx protocols Evelyn had uncovered. They knew that these protocols were their only hope of permanently resealing the box and preventing Zalnar from escaping. However, as they delved deeper into the Vorx technology, it became clear that their task was even more complex than they had imagined. The Vorx were a species whose understanding of the universe far surpassed human knowledge. Their technology was as much art as it was science, operating on principles that defied conventional logic. The more the team learned, the more they realized how little they actually knew. Tensions within the base began to rise. The isolation, the constant fear of Zalnar's influence, and the growing sense of dread took a toll on everyone. Strange occurrences started to happen, subtle at first, but increasingly alarming. People reported hearing whispers in their minds, seeing flickers of movement in the corners of their vision, and feeling an overwhelming sense of paranoia. One night, during a particularly fierce dust storm, the base's communication system, which had been partially restored, suddenly went haywire. Monitors flickered, alarms blared, and the lights dimmed and brightened erratically. Ethan rushed to the command center, where the team was frantically trying to regain control. "Status report!" Ethan shouted over the cacophony of alarms. Arya, the base's AI, responded with a voice strained by static. "Unidentified energy surge detected. Source unknown. Systems destabilizing." Ethan's heart sank. This had to be Zalnar. He knew the entity had been growing stronger, but he hadn't expected it to act so soon. "Lock down the base. Isolate the orb." But before they could execute the command, A low, resonant hum filled the base, vibrating through the walls and floors. The orb, still contained within its reinforced unit, began to glow with an intense light, brighter than anything they had seen before. The energy field surrounding it fluctuated wildly, as if struggling to contain the force within. Ethan watched in horror as the light from the orb seemed to bleed into the room, casting unnatural shadows that twisted and writhed. He could feel a pressure building in his mind, a presence pushing against the barriers of his consciousness. Zalnar was trying to break free, and it was using the orb as a conduit. "Everyone, stay back," Ethan ordered. But it was too late. The pressure in the room grew unbearable, and one by one, the team members collapsed, clutching their heads in agony as Zalnar's influence invaded their minds. Ethan fought to stay conscious, his vision blurring as the alien presence overwhelmed him. He could hear the whispers, insidious, malevolent, worming their way into his thoughts. They spoke of destruction, of the futility of resistance, of the inevitable end that awaited all who opposed Zalnar. But amid the chaos, a single voice cut through the noise. It was Evelyn, faint but resolute. "Ethan, you have to. Hold on. Don't let it in." Summoning every ounce of strength, Ethan focused on Evelyn's voice, using it as an anchor to keep himself grounded. The whispers grew louder, more insistent, but he refused to give in. He had to stop this. He had to find a way to sever Zalnar's connection before it was too late. Suddenly, the pressure in his mind lessened, and the light from the orb dimmed, as if retreating. Ethan gasped for breath, his body trembling from the effort of resisting Zalnar's influence. Around him, the rest of the team lay unconscious, their faces contorted in pain. Ethan knew they didn't have much time. Zalnar was probing their defenses, testing their resolve. The next time it attacked, it might not hold back. Desperation fueled his actions as he rushed to the control panel, accessing the Vorx protocols they had managed to decode. The Vorx had designed the box not just as a prison, but as a weapon, a last resort in case Zalnar ever threatened to escape. The protocols Ethan had uncovered described a method to amplify the containment field, turning the box into a dimensional anchor that could permanently trap Zalnar within its own reality. But activating the protocol would come at a great cost. The energy required to seal the box would be immense, and the process would likely destroy the orb and anything else in close proximity. It was a suicide mission, and Ethan knew it. But there was no other choice. As he prepared the sequence, Ethan heard a faint noise behind him. He turned to see one of his colleagues, Dr. Lena Ortiz, struggling to her feet. She looked disoriented, her eyes unfocused, but there was a determination in her expression. "Ethan, what are you doing?" she asked, her voice hoarse. "I'm going to end this, Lena," Ethan replied, his voice steady despite the fear gnawing at him. "I'm going to activate the Vorx protocol and seal the box. It's the only way to stop Zalnar." Lena's eyes widened as she realized what that meant. "But you'll—" "I know," Ethan interrupted, "but we don't have a choice. If Zalnar gets out, it's over, for all of us." Lena hesitated, then nodded, tears brimming in her eyes. "Let me help you." Together, they worked to finalize the sequence, inputting the complex algorithms that would trigger the Vorx protocol. As they did, the orb's light flared again, but this time it was different, more focused, more intense. Zalnar knew what they were doing, and it was fighting back. "Ethan, hurry," Lena urged, her hands shaking as she struggled to keep the system stable. "I'm almost there," Ethan replied, his fingers flying over the controls. He could feel Zalnar pushing against his mind again, but this time he was ready. He blocked out the whispers, focusing only on the task at hand. Finally, the sequence was complete. The control panel emitted a series of rapid beeps, and the containment unit around the orb began to hum with energy. The Vorx protocols had been activated, and the dimensional anchor was forming. But as the energy field intensified, the orb began to destabilize. Cracks appeared on its surface, and beams of light shot out, tearing through the lab like deadly lasers. Lena screamed as one of the beams struck her, vaporizing her instantly. Ethan barely had time to react before another beam sliced through the air, narrowly missing him. He knew he couldn't stay in the lab much longer. Once the protocol reached its peak, the entire room would be consumed by the energy discharge. With one last look at the control panel, Ethan made his decision. He set the final command to activate the dimensional anchor, then sprinted for the exit. Behind him, the orb's light grew blindingly bright, and the hum of the containment field reached a deafening pitch. As he ran down the corridor, the base's walls shook with the force of the energy buildup. The air crackled with electricity, and Ethan could feel the hairs on his arms standing on end. He didn't look back. He couldn't. When he reached the emergency bulkhead, Ethan slammed his hand down on the override button. The thick metal door slid shut just as a massive explosion rocked the base, sending shockwaves through the structure. The lights flickered and died, plunging the corridor into darkness. Ethan collapsed against the bulkhead, gasping for breath. He could feel the heat from the explosion on the other side of the door, but he was alive. Somehow, against all odds, he had survived. But his relief was short-lived. The AI's voice crackled to life over the base's intercom, distorted and broken. "Warning, critical containment breach. Structural integrity compromised." Ethan's heart sank. Despite his efforts, it wasn't enough. Zalnar was still fighting, still trying to escape. The base was falling apart, and if Zalnar got out, there would be nothing left to stop it. Summoning the last of his strength, Ethan pushed himself to his feet. He couldn't give up now. He had to finish what Evelyn had started. With determination in his eyes, he set off down the darkened corridor, heading for the core of the base. As he moved deeper into the facility, the temperature dropped, and the walls began to frost over. Zalnar's influence was spreading, warping the environment into something alien and hostile. Ethan could feel the pressure in his mind building again, the whispers growing louder with each step. But he didn't stop. He knew that the only way to end this was to reach the core and trigger the final failsafe, the Vorex's last line of defense. It was a one-way trip, but it was the only option left. When he finally reached the core, the sight that greeted him was both awe-inspiring and terrifying. The room was dominated by a massive, glowing structure, the dimensional anchor. It pulsed with a deep, rhythmic energy, casting long shadows across the walls. The orb, now cracked and leaking light, was suspended in the center of the structure, its energy feeding into the anchor. Ethan approached the control console, his hands trembling. This was it, the final step. All he had to do was activate the failsafe, and the dimensional anchor would collapse, taking Zalnar with it. But it would also destroy the base, and him along with it. He hesitated for only a moment before pressing the button. The console beeped in acknowledgement, and the anchor's hum grew louder, more intense. Ethan could feel the energy in the room shifting, growing unstable. As the failsafe activated, the whispers in his mind reached a crescendo, and Ethan doubled over in pain. Zalnar was fighting desperately now, trying to break free before the anchor collapsed. But it was too late. The failsafe was already in motion. With a final agonized scream, Ethan felt the world around him dissolve into light. The dimensional anchor imploded, collapsing in on itself and taking the orb, and Zalnar, with it. The energy discharge tore through the base, vaporizing everything in its path. In that moment, as the light consumed him, Ethan felt a strange sense of peace. He had done it. He had stopped Zalnar. And as the darkness closed in, he allowed himself to think of Evelyn and the stars that had always called to them both. Then, there was nothing. On Earth, the last transmission from the Martian base flickered on a monitor in a darkened control room. A single word, spoken in a voice filled with both triumph and sorrow. Goodbye. And then the screen went black. Humanity had survived, but at a terrible cost. The base was lost, its secrets buried beneath the red sands of Mars, where they would remain undisturbed for millennia. But the memory of those who had fought to save their world would live on, a testament to the indomitable spirit of the human race. The Earth was in turmoil. News of the Martian base's destruction, the mysterious energy surges, and the last haunting transmission from Dr. Ethan Walsh had sent shockwaves across the globe. Governments, scientists, and the public were gripped by fear and uncertainty. What had really happened on Mars? And more importantly, was the threat truly over? In the days following the incident, strange phenomena began to occur across the planet. Blackouts plagued major cities, unusual weather patterns emerged, and reports of people experiencing vivid hallucinations flooded emergency lines. Some even claimed to hear voices, alien, incomprehensible whispers that echoed in their minds. It was clear that Zalnar's influence had not been fully contained. Something had gone terribly wrong. The United Nations convened an emergency summit, bringing together the world's top scientists, military leaders, and government officials. They needed answers, and they needed them fast. In a secure underground facility, far from the prying eyes of the public, they gathered to discuss their next steps. Among the experts called to the summit was Dr. Isabel Green, a brilliant physicist who had worked closely with Evelyn Marlowe before the Mars mission. Isabel had been one of the first to recognize the potential dangers of the alien box, and she had warned against tampering with it. Now, with both Evelyn and Ethan gone, the burden of stopping Zalnar had fallen on her shoulders. The room was tense as the summit began. The air was thick with the weight of what was at stake. The assembled leaders looked to Isabel for guidance, their expressions a mix of hope and desperation. "Dr. Green," the Secretary General began, his voice somber. "We've all seen the reports. We've heard the rumors. But we need the truth. What are we dealing with? And how do we stop it?" Isabel took a deep breath before speaking. What happened on Mars was catastrophic, but it was not the end. Zalnar, the entity that Dr. Marlowe and Dr. Walsh encountered, is far more powerful than we initially believed. When the containment protocols failed, Zalnar's influence wasn't fully confined to the Martian base. Some part of it escaped. A murmur of unease rippled through the room. "Escaped?" a military commander asked, his voice laced with disbelief. "Are you saying this thing is on Earth?" Isabel nodded. "Not in a physical sense, but its influence is here. The energy disruptions, the hallucinations, the voices people are hearing. These are all signs that Zalnar's consciousness has reached our world. It's searching for a way to manifest fully in our dimension." The Secretary General leaned forward, his expression grave. "How do we stop it? If it's not fully here, is there a way to push it back, to seal it away for good?" Isabel hesitated, knowing that what she was about to suggest was dangerous and possibly beyond human capability. But there was no other option. "There is a way. Zalnar is using the residual energy from the orb and the dimensional breaches created on Mars. If we can generate a counterwave, a powerful enough energy field, we might be able to sever its connection to our dimension. But it will require immense power, far more than we have ever attempted to harness." "And the risks?" asked a scientist seated beside her. "They're astronomical," Isabel admitted. "We'll need to create a global network of synchronized energy generators, all focused on a single point. If anything goes wrong, the backlash could devastate entire regions. But if we do nothing, Zalnar will find a way to fully enter our world, and we won't survive that." The room fell silent as the implications of Isabel's plan sank in. Finally, the Secretary General spoke. "Do whatever it takes, Dr. Green. The fate of humanity rests in your hands." In the days that followed, the world mobilized as never before. The plan to create a global energy network, codenamed Project Aegis, was put into action. The world's most advanced power stations, particle accelerators, and experimental energy devices were repurposed and linked together in a colossal effort to generate the counterwave needed to stop Zalnar. As the project moved forward, Isabel and her team worked around the clock, coordinating with experts from every corner of the globe. Time was running out. The strange phenomena were intensifying, and reports of violent behavior among those affected by Zalnar's influence were increasing. It was clear that the entity was growing stronger, and its attempts to breach the dimensional barrier were becoming more aggressive. In the final days before the counterwave was to be activated, Isabel found herself alone in the control center, staring at the schematics of the energy grid they had constructed. The weight of what was about to happen pressed down on her. The plan was their last hope, but the risks were terrifying. As she sat there, lost in thought, she felt a presence behind her. Turning, she saw a figure standing in the shadows, just out of the light. Her heart skipped a beat. For a moment she thought it was Evelyn, somehow returned from the beyond. But as the figure stepped forward, she realized it was something else. The figure was translucent, barely visible, like a ghost. Its features were undefined, shifting and flickering, but its eyes, if they could be called that, glowed with a faint, malevolent light. Isabel knew instinctively that she was looking at an avatar of Zalnar. "Dr. Green," the entity's voice echoed in her mind, cold and ancient. "You cannot stop what is coming. I have waited eons for this moment. Your resistance is futile." Isabel felt a wave of fear wash over her, but she forced herself to remain calm. "Why are you here? What do you want?" The entity's form flickered, as if amused by her question. "To exist, to become. Your world will be mine, just as so many others have been. You cannot comprehend the scale of my power, the inevitability of my triumph." Isabel clenched her fists, refusing to be intimidated. "We will stop you, even if it costs us everything." Zalnar's form pulsed, its voice filled with contempt. "You are nothing, a fleeting spark in the darkness. Your world will be extinguished, and I will rise." With that, the figure dissolved into the air, leaving Isabel alone once more. But the encounter had strengthened her resolve. She knew what was at stake, and she knew they had no choice but to fight. The day of the counterwave activation arrived, and the world held its breath. Across the globe, the energy generators hummed to life, their power levels rising to unprecedented levels. In the control center, Isabel monitored the data feeds, her nerves on edge. Everything had to go perfectly. There was no margin for error. As the final countdown began, Isabel's thoughts turned to Evelyn and Ethan. They had sacrificed everything to stop Zalnar, and now it was up to her to finish what they had started. The memory of their courage gave her strength. "Activation in T-10 seconds," the AI intoned, its voice calm and steady. Isabel's heart raced as the seconds ticked down. She knew that Zalnar would sense what they were about to do and would fight back with everything it had. 5, 4, 3, 2, now! Isabel shouted, slamming her hand down on the activation switch. All at once, the global energy network surged to life. Beams of energy shot across the planet, converging on a single point in the atmosphere, a location calculated to create the maximum disruption to the dimensional breach. The sky lit up with a blinding light, and the air vibrated with the sheer power of the counterwave. But as the energy converged, the ground beneath their feet began to shake. The sky above them darkened, as if the light itself was being consumed by an unseen force. Zalnar was fighting back, and its presence was felt everywhere at once, in the howling winds, in the trembling earth, in the minds of every living being. Isabel watched in horror as the control panel sparked, and the power levels fluctuated wildly. The counterwave was powerful, but Zalnar was pushing back, trying to destabilize the network. If it succeeded, the resulting backlash would be catastrophic. "Stabilize the field," Isabel ordered, her voice barely audible over the roar of the energy surge. Engineers and technicians worked frantically to keep the generators online, but Zalnar's influence was wreaking havoc on their systems. Isabel could feel the pressure in her mind building, the whispers growing louder, more insistent. Zalnar was trying to break her, to force her to shut down the counterwave. But she couldn't stop. Not now. Not when they were so close. With a final, desperate effort, Isabel accessed the Vorex protocols that Evelyn had uncovered, integrating them into the energy grid. The protocols were designed to amplify the dimensional disruption, targeting Zalnar's connection to their world. It was a risky move, but it was their only chance. As the protocols activated, the energy field stabilized, and the counterwave surged to its maximum intensity. The sky above them split open, revealing a dark void where Zalnar's presence loomed, a swirling mass of alien energy that threatened to engulf everything. "Now or never," Isabel whispered, her hand shaking as she initiated the final phase of the operation. The counterwave hit the dimensional breach with the force of 1,000 suns, ripping through the fabric of reality itself. Zalnar's form wavered, distorted, as the energy tore at its connection to their world. The ground shook violently, and the air was filled with a deafening roar. Isabel felt the pressure in her mind spike, as if Zalnar was screaming in rage and pain, but the entity's grip was weakening. The counterwave was working, the breach was closing, and then, with a blinding flash of light, the breach collapsed in on itself, sealing shut with a finality that shook the very core of the planet. The energy surge dissipated, and the sky returned to its normal color. The ground stopped shaking, and the deafening roar faded into silence. It was over. Isabel stood there, trembling, as the realization sank in. They had done it. They had stopped Zalnar. The world had been saved. But as the adrenaline wore off, she felt a deep, aching sadness. So much had been lost. Evelyn, Ethan, and countless others who had given their lives to protect humanity. And though the immediate threat was gone, she knew that the cost of their victory would be felt for generations to come. The control center was silent as the remaining team members slowly rose to their feet, their faces a mixture of exhaustion and relief. The world had been spared, but at a terrible price. Isabel looked out at the monitors, at the peaceful sky above, and thought of Evelyn and Ethan. She hoped, wherever they were, they knew that their sacrifice had not been in vain. In the days and weeks that followed, the world slowly began to recover. The strange phenomena ceased, and the hallucinations and whispers faded away. Scientists worked tirelessly to understand the full implications of what had happened, while the public struggled to come to terms with the events that had nearly led to their destruction. Project Aegis became a symbol of humanity's resilience and determination. The story of how the world came together to stop an ancient, cosmic threat inspired a new era of cooperation and scientific advancement. But it also served as a grim reminder of the dangers that lurked in the unknown reaches of the universe. As for Isabel, she returned to her research, haunted by the memories of those she had lost, but determined to continue their work. She knew that there were still mysteries to be unraveled, still threats that might one day emerge. But she also knew that humanity had faced one of the greatest dangers in its history and had survived. And so, life on Earth continued, forever changed by the events that had unfolded. The alien box that had started it all was locked away in a secure facility, never to be opened again. But the knowledge and courage of those who had fought to protect the world would live on, a testament to the indomitable spirit of the human race. The stars still called to humanity, but now they would approach them with caution, with respect for the unknown. For they had learned a hard lesson. Some secrets were never meant to be uncovered. But if they ever were, humanity would be ready.